member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Committee for Homeland Security, and a former CIA undercover officer. Always good to have you on the show, Congressman.
Chris, good morning. Good to be on.
All right, so let me get your head on the man that we had on talking about how he can prove 3 million people voted illegally. He has no proof to show. He's got a lot of explanations for that. He is relevant because it does seem in timing and in the texture of the statement that the President of the United States picked up on what this guy was putting down without basis. Your take?
Well, there's a lot of people that are involved in our elections, and if they haven't shown real proof. You haven't seen the Secretary of State for California talking about fraud. You haven't seen other candidates that were in down ballot races where something like this would have a dramatic impact having this concern. I think this is a distraction from some of the real issues, like making sure we strengthen trade with Mexico, that we deal with ISIS, and make sure we have a right kind of relationship with Russia.
Right. But Congressman, you know why I'm talking to him. It's not because that's I want to chase. I'm an investigative reporter. There's nothing there for me to chase at this point. It's because the president has put it on the radar and made it a political priority, as he did debunking the intelligence community's assessment that Russia was behind the hacks during our election. What do you make of those positions?
Well, like I said, I'm not criticizing you, Chris, for doing your job, but these are some of the rabbit holes I don't think we should be going down. There has been zero evidence, credible evidence, that I've seen or have been presented to me. Department of Homeland Security hasn't seen anything. They provide support to protect our voting systems. I even did a hearing on one of the committees that I serve as a chairman on the integrity of our ballot box, and I just came through a very tight election myself.
Yes, you did.
So the issue of voter fraud is something that is important to me, and haven't seen any indications of any real evidence that says the counter.
And I hear you. And look, as I said to that man, and I say on social media, when he has the proof, we'll put it on first. We'll have it vetted,
sure,
but we'll put it on first. Because if it's real, it's a real concern.
Look, if it's real, it's a real concern, and we should look at it. But as I learned as an undercover officer in the CIA, information is one thing, intelligence is something else.
Yes.
And you have to have properly vetted information that is fact-checked, and just making assumptions with no data is helpful to no one.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be trying to create some concern around whether or not our voting processes are strong and protected.
All right, let me get your head on two things that are much more pressing right now. We have the intel community saying Russia was behind the hacks during the election. We then have the now President of the United States saying he didn't believe it. And now we hear there's an executive order that he may be signing and preparing to remove sanctions on Russia, and he has a big call with the Russian president tomorrow. Where's your head on this?
Well, I'm ready for Rex Tillerson to get confirmed and get in position. Look, it is very clear that the Russian intelligence services were involved in the hacking of the Democratic National Committee and the Democratic Campaign Congressional Committee, and that Russia is our adversary. They are not our allies. Another thing I learned when I was in the CIA, be nice to nice guys and tough with tough guys. And the sanctions against Russia are an important tool, not only because of this most recent hacking, what the intelligence community refers to as Grizzly Step, but because of their previous activity, going into Ukraine, going into Crimea, the Russians going into Syria. The reason they're in Syria is not to prop up Bashar al-Assad. They're in that in order to have an air base that can project power into the Mediterranean. What are their plans and intentions with Estonia? They want to see the back of NATO broken, and we need to have all the tools at our fingertips to deal with Russia. I think another tool we should be using and what we should be talking about is how do we sell energy to Eastern Europe. The Russian economy is more tied to the price of a barrel of oil. We have a lot of energy here. Our Eastern European allies want to buy it from us and not from Russia. These are where some of the conversations we need to be having, and I hope in this conversation on Saturday that some of these things are brought up.
Well, that's all about the disposition of the men involved, whether they're looking to make peace or to be, as you said, bad with bad guys, tough with tough guys. Another issue that's pressing to you, your district of constituency is really a lot of place that will be subject to whatever border plans come up there in Texas, a wall, the effects of this fracture with the Mexican president and our president. What's your take?
Well, let's start with something very basic, Chris. We live in a world that's more dangerous than our parents, and our children are probably going to inherit a world that's more dangerous than ours. So we should be defending our borders, and border security is important, but we should do it right. We should not just be doing something for the sake of movement. And building a wall from the Pacific to the Gulf Coast of Texas is the most expensive and least effective way to do this. Let's take some of this border wall money, and by the way, MIT believes that this is going to potentially cost up to $40 billion. The U.S. intelligence budget is $53 billion. So let's use some of that money to add more Border Patrol officers. Let's do things. You can't build a wall in a river. Our president is an expert.
That's called a dam.
I'm sure he's going to realize that soon.
That's called a dam when you build a wall in the river.
Right.
Look, Congressman, he's not going to like what you're saying right now. And how much does that factor into what you say? You know, I mean, you're a comer in your party right now. People have a lot of enthusiasm about you. He's saying it's going to cost $8. Not what MIT says. He's saying that this is the key to securing the border, and it's worth going to war with the Mexican president politically, and you seem to be contradicting a lot of that.
Well, again, over the last 8 years, my problem with the previous administration is that they had a one-size-fits-all solution to border security. What you need in San Diego is very different than what you need in El Paso or Eagle Pass. Those are two cities in my district. So let's empower the men and women in Border Patrol to adjust their tactics, techniques, and procedures as they see fit. And so we can't continue this notion of having a one-size-fits-all solution, but just changing the solution. I am proud to represent Big Bend National Park. They have peaks that are thousands of feet high right on the river. Are you going to build a wall on top of a mountain? You have the Chihuahuan Desert where you can see for 200 miles in one direction. And if you build a wall and you don't have enough people to be there to deal with someone who may jump the wall, then wasting that money. You're wasting hard-earned taxpayer dollar, right? So again, I think that our president is committed to protecting the country. He's committed to enforcing the law. But let's make sure the things that we're using hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually make sense. We haven't even talked about intelligence. There are 19 criminal organizations that are operating in Mexico. We should be increasing the intelligence on them, working with our Mexican partners, because we have to remember that this is a problem for Mexico as well. They are our friend, they are our partner, and we should be working together on how we can solve this problem together and not fighting with each other.
Documentary we did on El Chapo, that's how they got him, with U.S. intel help. Will Hurd, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective. You're always welcome to make the case here.